Welcome back to Between the Rows, a Be Hero podcast. Thank you for joining. My name is Itai Kanot. I'm your host for this podcast. And in each episode, we talk to people shaping the future of agriculture, from realities that growers face in the real world to the technologies trying to keep up. Today, I'm hosting Walt Duflock. Thank you very much for joining. And Walt is a Senior Vice President of Innovation at Western Growers. Walt works at the intersection of growers, automation, robotics, and AgTech adoption. His role is less about chasing the next shiny technology and more about asking the hard questions: what actually works, what scales, and what helps growers manage real risk. We'll touch briefly on pollination, given the timing of the season, but this conversation is really about innovation, meeting reality in agriculture, especially as labor, biology, economics, and capital all collide. Let's get into it. Walt, again, thank you very much for joining me today. I want to actually start maybe with your personal journey, how you got into what you're doing today. You've worked across policy, grower organizations, and now innovation. And I think it's fascinating. And I would really like to hear how you kind of got into this world, and yeah.
Sure. No, I find it fascinating too, having lived it. And it turns out that the perfect mix of ag tech is when you grow up on a farm, and then you come to Silicon Valley. So you know ag, you know tech, and then ag tech becomes a thing, and you're like, well, hello, there you are.
Yeah.
And so I grew up on two ranches. My first 12 years, I was down in the Imperial Valley, east of San Diego, the middle of the desert, but a very good ag community down there.
Close to Salton Lake?
Close to Salton Sea, exactly, right. Yep, just south of there, off the 8. And I knew two things. I knew that my grandfather ran the Chamber of Commerce for 50 years, and we'd go out and see new businesses all the time, many of them ag-related. I knew that my dad ran a couple different ranching operations, mainly cattle and hay. Learned a lot about that side of the business and that side of the state. And then my folks split, so I spent school years in Monterey County, about 2 hours south of here. Fifth generation ranch. That one was really fun. We bought it from the Mexican government in 1871.
Oh, wow.
So it is 155 years old.
Wow.
And a lot has changed.
I'm sure.
So I went to Cal Poly for a business degree. Then I came to Santa Clara for a law degree. Met my charming wife. We have 5 kids. We're living in Los Gatos and loving it. And I spent a lot of time at startups. So I was at eBay, is the one folks have heard of, but a couple others in the loosely enterprise data center space and the e-commerce space. And then around 2014, 2015, my ag friends were like, what is going on up there in your valley? And my valley friends were like, what is going on down there with the ranchers? And I'm like, you know what? I'll go look around. Never came back. So for the last 10 plus years, I've really been at that intersection of specialty crop agriculture in California and the technologists that can help them. And at Western Growers for the last 5.5 years. So I worked with an accelerator for a while, Thrive.
Yeah.
SVG Thrive.
Yeah.
That was a fun ride with John Hartnett and that crew. And then the Western Growers position came open, and I said, boy, I knew the organization from my ranching background.
Right.
And our ranch, by the way, full disclosure, I say that I'm a 5th generation farmer, more like it's a 5th generation farming operation. I've never really worked a full day on it other than to help out my family.
Sure.
And I worked as a kid for free labor. We run cattle. We have great tenants for the grapes. We have Mondavi, now Constellation for the grapes, now Gallo actually, and then we have Leafy Greens grower partners. So, but the ranch has been there forever. So bringing that with me to Silicon Valley and then bringing that Silicon Valley startup with me to AgTech has been really helpful. And so at Western Growers, the charter, as you said in the intro, is how do we solve labor and how do we solve the chemistry pressures that are never ending. And so that's the whole job right now, is just more robots to help with labor and more biologicals, genetics, and regenerative ag startups and tools to help them use less chemistry.
Got it. So I'm assuming that when growers come to you, they come not because they're just interested in what's going on. They come because they have an issue that they want solved, right? So when they talk to you about how technology can potentially help them solve their problems, is it mostly related to labor? Is it water? Like, what do you see? Or maybe over the years it's changing and there are different pressures that are more top of mind. But from your perspective, what are the questions that you usually get the most?
Yes, and this is where it is beneficial to be 60 years old, having sat at a lot of dinner tables with grandparents and parents and peers over the years. And it's always worth noting they haven't changed much. The order may change, but they haven't changed much. It's always been labor. It's always been water in California. It's always been chemistry pressures and food safety. Those have been the rotating four. And when a food safety outbreak hits, that jumps up the list a little.
Right.
When water allocations from SGMA hits, the sustainable groundwater, that may jump up a little bit. When labor, and we see a bump in H2A, international farm workers, by 3x in 5 years, and that's more expensive labor. Labor for sure is now. So I would argue those four have been rotating, but the last 20 years, labor has just been all consuming because you can't find enough of it here. The generational farm worker has become the generational McDonald's worker, sandwich shop worker, retail worker. They don't want to work on the farm. And
right.
So the kids in their 20s that in prior generations for about a generation and a half would come back to the farm and do the job that their parents did are now saying, you know what, not so much.
I think that in the past it used to be very shiny, being working on the farm, knowing that you're producing food for your community and everybody around. And I think now people look at it as why would I work crazy hours out in the sun or out in the rain or out in the heat or out in the cold?
Right.
Where there are bugs and whatnot, doing physical labor, when I can sit in an air-conditioned office and, get paid the same. I think that, by the way, another, like I told you, I grew up on a farm myself.
Right.
One of the things that you hear a lot growing up is how challenging it is being in agriculture, how hard it is, how there's no future for it. And a lot of the time, I think, your elders in the community, it's not necessarily just your parents, but what you hear around in your community is people trying to steer you away, like go get a degree, go try to do this, go
right.
try to do that. And I think for kids at a really young age, this already kind of pivots their way of thinking into other directions, and they don't necessarily even think of the idea of going back to the farm later on in life.
With you, living it. Both of my folks were like, you're going to have the ranch. You've grown up here. You've fed hay to the cattle. You've done fence posts. You've done,
right.
You know what the operation looks like. Don't go get an ag degree. Go get a business degree, which was, I think, good advice at the time because I did have the ag knowledge. But it's interesting to that exact point. I find the AgTech so fascinating because the number of growers that have admitted they overinvest in technology like drones and sensors just to get some of the next generation to get interested
right.
and maybe come back.
Yep.
So I'm not saying folks are buying drones that never ROI, but I'm saying if they don't ROI well and the kid comes back to the farm, that's a win. And so I think, ironically, I totally agree with you. Even in California, the mother lode of specialty crops, we still heard growing up in agricultural communities in Imperial Valley and Monterey County, oh yeah, this won't be here in 40 years. And you're like,
sure.
No, it's more than here. But when you hear that for so long, you definitely think about, okay, in terms of a career path, probably not something I want to go chase.
Yeah.
And I would argue, so I work a lot with the universities, right? Davis, Cal Poly, Fresno State, Merced,
yeah.
and a bunch of others. And a lot of community colleges, Hartnell, Hancock, the ones on the 5 in the San Joaquin Valley. And I would argue that all of these institutions have a hard time, like even the Ag 452 class at Cal Poly, I went down and trained that. This is a apply for class. You don't just sign up for it. You got to get in to this class. It's about 30 kids, and I had them for 2 hours last year, January of 25. 2/3 of them are graduating in June.
Yeah.
30 of them in the class. I asked, how many of you guys have a path forward in June that is ag-related? Like 8 hands.
Really?
How do we let 22 kids get to the point where they sign up for that class? They go through the effort. They sit there, they're paying attention, they're asking good questions, and 22 of them don't have a path. They had jobs, but
Right.
not a path forward in ag. It's super interesting.
It is. It is very interesting.
And believe me, there are jobs out there for them. Any of my members, Taylor Farms, Driscoll's Berries, Braga Fresh, they need good employees. And they need them today.
And good help is always pretty hard to get.
100%.
And the way that I grew up, and like you told me earlier before we started, I was also free labor,
right,
as a kid for my dad. And
I won't even tell you what I got paid.
No.
It starts with a 2.
So this one time I worked over summer vacation. I worked for my dad. And what I got at the end of it, I was really into binoculars at the time.
Okay.
I really wanted one.
Yep.
So I got a binocular at the end of summer vacation. I was working, I don't know, maybe a month, and I got a set of binoculars, and I was really excited about that.
You thought that was a great deal.
Yeah. For me at the time, it definitely was.
That's great.
So
my story on that one, I worked an entire summer down in El Centro in the heat.
Yeah.
Got up at 4:30 so I could be at work by 5 so I could finish by 1 and go to lunch and get some great Mexican food. And I worked that whole summer, and the outcome of that summer was my dad matched me. I had 900. He had 900. We found a 57 Chevy in San Diego with the 3 on the tree up here. And I had that truck, and that was my truck. And I was very happy to have that truck. That was literally an entire summer of output.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So my dad always told me, if you want to get accepted to work here permanently, you need a college degree.
Right.
Like, because he really wanted us. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I have 2 younger sisters, and he always told us, like, you need to go get a degree. You need to expand your horizons. If you want to come back to the farm, it's always going to be here for you. But I don't want you to choose this because I chose that.
Right.
And for my father, it's a little different because I'm a second generation. He was the founder? He was yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's, in my opinion, that's always the hardest chair to fill.
Right.
Getting it going from nothing. That is good on you.
Yeah. So he started it back in, I guess, early 80s.
Okay.
They bought the farm they still live on when my mom was pregnant with me. So that was probably 86. I was born in 87. And he started with, when my dad started, he started with like 25 hives.
Okay.
And today he's got like 5,000 or 6,000.
Wow.
And he's the biggest in Israel too. And, he was a hard worker his whole life.
So from this, the business model hadn't changed. A lot of growers change business models from day one. He was doing hives.
He was doing hives. He did have a few other things because when he bought the farm, it used to be a dairy farm previously.
Okay.
It had some land too for orchards, but he bought it. It had a dairy farm on it. So he planted apples. So we were growing apples as well. We had some apples, and he was growing calves from until they were able to eat solids. So we got them when they were still drinking milk. Right. Transferred them to solids, and then they would move on. But yeah, so over the years, I've had this example of somebody that took something made something from nothing, and made it pretty successful too. And I enjoyed working there. I loved working in beekeeping. Gives you a lot of opportunities, not just being outdoors, but changing your environment all the time. Because it's not only you're moving between your different yards where you keep your bees, it's like the yards change based on the seasons. Right. So I really liked the traveling part of that work. I wanted to talk to you about an article that you recently posted on. I saw it on LinkedIn. Yep. How investments in AgTech changed over the last 5 years. So I think you mentioned in 21 it was like $53 billion.
Exactly.
And in 2025 it was $10 billion. This is a huge change.
Huge.
As somebody that works in this industry, I feel it, like I see it.
Right.
But Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, see what your perspective on it was, because this is a super interesting transition, and I want to know what do you think brought us from one place to the other?
Yeah, so what brought us to 53 billion really started back in 2013 with Climate Corp. Remember those guys?
Yep.
First $1 billion exit in AgTech was Dave Friedberg's little company, as we call it. And they got the $1 billion out to Monsanto, and off Dave went, and everyone's like, oh, well, okay, so two things. You can start a startup in AgTech and get $1 billion outcome, and clearly growers have some challenge areas because they're buying Dave's stuff. Okay. So from $2 billion in 2013, things kept rolling, things kept funding. Everyone identified there are some real challenges and there's some real TAMs, some total addressable markets that are gettable.
Right.
So you saw the ramp up to 53 billion. And along the way, and it's fair to mention this, we went from AgTech to agri-food tech.
Yes.
So we added all the food stuff to it.
Right.
To make it look bigger. That's what the Ag Funder News will now admit. I mean, Louisa will say, yeah, we wanted it to appear bigger, so we added food to it. Because they're two very different segments when you really look at them, but you can see why they're together. So that category grew to 53 billion. The challenge with it in 2021, there were macro challenges and there were micro. Macro, you had a complete shrinkage of the IPO market. Remember that?
Yes.
1,058
yes.
in 2021, and we went down to 185. 2 years later, right?
Yeah.
Well, this lack of IPOs means the cash funnel between limited partners, venture capital, and then startups slows down because the cash never gets returned to the LP until there's an event. And without those IPOs, staying private longer, right? Without those IPOs, the LPs were left going, I've got no cash for the next fund, guys.
Sure.
And so VCs were getting hit hard. They took a big hit. They went from core VC, all tech segments, 354 billion in 2021, 171 billion in 2023. So 50% drop, right?
Yep.
What saved them? AI.
Yep.
So AI is propping up the whole darn valley for the last 2 years. No end in sight, by the way, right?
Right.
So good on you, AI. But why was AgTech then dropping 85%? Because two categories were really bad behavior. We got overhyped controlled environment agriculture. We got overhyped alternative protein, right?
Yeah.
So all the vertical farms that everyone thought was going to take over the world and put specialty crop farmers and put the in the dirt farmers out of business, how'd that work out? And all the Impossible and Beyond Burgers, despite Ethan and Patrick making all kinds of noise about how the cattle on my ranch are the clean coal of the protein industry, and we do remember those quotes, boys.
Of course.
How's that working out, right? The people they needed to write them checks to buy their operations are not interested in writing checks to them when they're struggling now, right?
Yep.
And so those two categories all by themselves in the entire agri-food tech segment were 42% of that $53 billion.
Wow.
And both of them ended up being dumpster fires.
Yeah.
And so, again, no exits, no M&A, no cash return to the LP across 42% of 53 billion, right? No IPOs at the macro level, two bad categories at the micro level. I am now confidently predicting that we will be in the $8 to $12 billion tranche in agri-food tech for about 5 years.
And do you think that this is like a market reset? Like this is where we're supposed to be, or do you think there's more to it? Because, look, generally speaking, and you've just mentioned it, like the investments and the way that VCs now value at different tech companies, not just in ag, right? Everywhere. After there was like a gold rush during the beginning of COVID, but then everything kind of plummeted, and we've seen a lot of companies here in Silicon Valley not related
Pharma
to ag,
gold rush.
yeah, not related to ag at all. Companies that their valuation was cut in half and even worse.
Yeah.
So like I'm sure that has some connection with what we're seeing in ag, right? Because it affected everyone, right? But you're saying that in ag it was a lot worse, and the question I have for you is that a reset or just something that we're going to experience for a while, like we're in a valley now and it's going to come up again?
So I do think it's a little bit of a reset, because I think 2025 was the first point where you could say Silicon Valley is getting back to healthy, because they're picking back up over 200 billion in venture capital. And yes,
the
AI
bubble
is
exploded.
25% of that,
Yeah.
but AI is carrying a lot of freight. I mean,
it does.
$20 billion in revenue for ChatGPT, three in a couple months, 3 years after launch,
Yeah.
unprecedented, right? And so you're seeing revenue, you're seeing build out, you're seeing established players. So Silicon Valley is riding on the backs of both ChatGPT, Anthropic, and then Google, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, right? All who need to put in the big builds. So it looks like Silicon Valley's getting back to health, heavily based on one category, but that's not new for our valley, right?
Sure.
Meanwhile, agri-food tech, what has to happen? My opinion, and the reason it is systemic, in my opinion, is the LPs only come back when exits return. And right now, IPOs are really hard in AgTech. We don't have the revenue velocity or the absolute revenue dollars to do IPOs. When, I mean, what's the new number, right? 20 years ago, you used to say $100 million and 25% growth. You could maybe pull one off. Now it's closer to $500 million.
Right.
And probably similar growth. That's a big gap. That's a big number to go after, right? If you're not Anthropic and then ChatGPT. And so I think, so we won't see IPOs get AgTech out of this funk. What we will see is real companies delivering real solutions that can solve problems growers have, not problems growers didn't know they had. And so you then look at who's going to do the exits. It's going to be, for my world, it's two categories. It's the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, the Deeres, AGCOs, Case New Hollands of the world. And then on the other side, it's the biological and genetics folks. So it's the chemistry folks and biological folks and genetics folks that can buy companies at decent outcomes. So John Deere and Case have been buying companies, 100 to 300 million for the most part. Those are good outcomes. The chemistry guys have been a little busy. Private equity's been busy. So you see some exits coming. Yeah. And as that gets liquidity back up the funnel, I think LPs will realize, you know what? Labor is still a problem. We're still going to need robots. Chemistry pressure is still real. The regulatory constraints around chemistry only getting up. While I don't like to see them taking away chemistry, in my opinion, sometimes ahead of the science, they're going to keep doing that, right? The regulators in DC, Sacramento, Europe are pretty determined to get a lot of chemistry out of play. And so if that's happening, that is headwinds for my growers in terms of margins and profitability, but it's tailwinds for the startup selling to them, because those are real pressures to try new products.
Yeah.
So last thought, sorry.
Yeah.
So until because grower revenue is down about 25 to 30% system-wide the last couple of years, right? Turns out 22 and 23 were okay years. Now we're down. Now we're way down. Well, that does two things. The growers can't buy as many tractors, and the growers can't pay as much for the inputs they used to, seeds and chemistry.
Yep.
And so until those companies see margins return, and I would argue until they see the cost of R&D becoming larger and riskier, so that corporate development and M&A almost becomes a better strategic objective, you're not going to see those checks getting written. But once they see R&D, and I predict they will, getting more expensive and riskier, and once they see startups with real solutions coming to the front, I think that checkbook will open back up from the OEMs and the Bayers, Syngentas of the world, and the genetics folks. And once we get those checkbooks to open back up, then the LPs will realize, okay, I can fund a startup with a reasonably clear line of sight that there's an acquisition, there's an acquirer out there that at the right set of metrics would look to do a deal.
Yeah.
So the money's going to drive a lot of it.
Money always drives everything.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, this actually connects us pretty well to the next topic that I wanted to talk to you about, which is adoption, trust, scale up. When you bring new tech into the ag world, and I mean, you see a lot of pilots across the specialty crops. Why do you think that so many AgTech solutions show promise early on, but then struggle to kind of scale and reach real operational levels?
Right. So it's the third hurdle, as I call it. So the first hurdle for the startup is, does your product work like you wanted it to work, right? Does it do the job? And that is generally a field trial, and you can validate that, and we can do that in a number of ways in a number of places. Doesn't have to be done on a grower operation. You can do that on Cal Poly land, Davis land, with the co-op extension resource. Yep, checkbox, it works. Second hurdle then is, does it work at scale in different conditions? So if it's wet, if it's dry, if it's hot, if it's cold, if it's night, if it's day, when does it bump up against limitations? Because growers are going to want to know.
Yeah.
And that's a series of tests, series of trials over years in different locations, different soil types, etc. Okay, second box, we check that. And that can also be done on UC land, CSU land, land-grant universities with co-op extension, all good, right? Doesn't have to be growers. But the third hurdle, and this is the big one for every startup, does it work as intended and in different conditions at economics that work for the grower? That is the key, and that's where I see so many startups really struggle. So that crossing the chasm analogy from technology and Jeffrey Moore, in AgTech, it's always getting it from works in multiple conditions to works at growers' math. And so we work really hard with startups and growers to develop a common framework around what does that look like. And the two steps are, you have to tie your solution to the problem statement and the financial statement for the grower. And you have to then do an extensive comparison of what did year one look like without my product, and what did year two look like with my product, and how does that math impact the grower's operation?
So this is, I think you're exactly right with the grower's math, because I think a lot of companies, a lot of tech companies, they go into a meeting with the grower, and they did all the math. They have extensive spreadsheets, right?
Right.
That tells you exactly how, by implementing this product, your ROI is this and that, because you're not only making more money, you're also saving more money, but da 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 da. And it's like, it makes sense to them, and it really does, right? But if the grower can't understand it, or in his head it doesn't math out, right, then there's nothing you can say.
That's right.
Like, there's absolutely nothing that you can say. You need to know how to speak the grower's language, the farmer's language, and actually deliver what you're saying you're gonna, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people. I think working with the agricultural community is just different than just any consumer product. It's really different. These are people that a lot of times they're very cynical. They don't easily trust just anyone. I got comments, when I was going to meetings early on in the early days of Be Hero, when AgTech was still kind of new, right?
Yeah.
And I came in with an F-150. This is the truck that I drive. And growers told me explicitly, you know how I know you know what you're talking about? This is what you drive. I get startup companies come here in their Toyota Prius, and I know immediately.
Their Model S Tesla.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, I didn't even think of that. Like, I grew up on a farm. I drove pickup trucks my entire life. I got to America and I was like, I'm going to buy a pickup truck, And so this is my daily. And yeah, those things really matter. And I think that people, like, they have a really good offering, but they don't understand that the grower doesn't want that.
Right.
And you have to adjust yourself in the product to what the growers actually are looking for.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. So what we did at Western Growers the last year and a half, we launched the case study program, and Ben Pallone, my colleague, has been tremendous. We actually looked at year one for a carbon robotics, the laser weeder, right? And we said, okay, let's go to one of the early movers that bought carbon. We went to Braga Fresh, I mentioned them earlier, and we asked the Braga team, we said, hey, what did it look like for you to do manual weeding across a lot of these acres over a year, and what did it look like once the robot came in? And they said, well, let's take a look. So we did 3,200 acres worth of analysis, all certified organic, 8 different crop types. That's where the robots work the best, right? Because organic, so many more labor hours, right? And they said for 3,200 acres, 1 year, the hand weeding labor all on its own, $2.1 million. Then they said when we added Carbon Robotics, a $1.4 million robot, yes, that same acreage, 1 year later, $1.3 million.
Oh, wow.
That $800,000, that's how you ROI a $1.4 million laser weeder, right?
Right.
But until we did that case study, we couldn't say with conviction that we knew the math worked for growers. Now we can. Now they can see that case study. And then we went one step further, and this is really cool. And Ben and I love this part. We gave them a template that any grower can use to say, look, your operation's different. You may be using H2A. You may be using direct labor. You may be using domestic labor. You may be using lease tractors. You may buy your tractors, right? Mm-hmm. You put in your math, and we'll tell you what the ROI should look like on your operation. And that's been really cool. So basically, we now shortcut 2 steps for you. We'll show you the Braga case study, and we'll give you the template to do the math on your own.
That's super interesting. And usually when you see tech and automation meet, the real life farming, what, from your experience at least, what's the first thing to break normally?
Well, you'll laugh. It's that human piece, right? So we've seen this from Burrow, the little harvest assist guy, all the way up to mechanical weeding robots, laser weeding robots. If you can't get that technology to integrate in with the operations team through either a direct sales team or a channel sales partner, the equipment graveyard is real, right? Yeah. People have spent 6 and 7 figures on equipment for decades in this valley,
right?
And not all of it works, right? Why does that happen? Key guy leaves at the wrong time, right? Could be a key guy at the operations team, could be a key guy at your seller partner, right? And see, you got a good dealer, but that dealer loses a top rep who relocates, you've got a mess on your hands, right? And so the startup's job is never done, because if you're selling direct, you got to make sure that rep's doing the job. If you're selling through channel, you got to make sure that rep's doing the job, and you dotted line. You don't solid line to that guy. Yeah. And then you got to make sure the operations team has their guy. So I mean, the key guys are those touch points, and until everything's in place and everything's integrated, the job is not done. Yeah,
and even in a traditional industry like agriculture, you still have the early adopters, people that want to try it first. They look at something, they think it's so cool and can help them in the future, and they're willing to spend some money or time to try it out. So let's say that getting to the early adopters is the easy part, right?
Right.
Like, you'll find them eventually, and they're early adopters. They'll want you. They'll let you try stuff on their field. What type of proof points the normal folk usually are looking for?
Yep. Yeah. So I would say 2 things. Let's back up to that, find the early adopter part, right? Yeah. I would argue, let's find a medium to large size early adopter, because they'll have the resources you need to do a successful pilot and rollout way more often than the little guys. Not their fault, just they don't have the resources, right? Yeah. So if you're at Tulare next week at World Ag Expo, if you're at World AgTech in a couple weeks in San Francisco, your first job as a sales and marketing team member of a startup is, I need to identify whether this guy is a customer now or a customer in 5 years. Because if I start working with that customer in 5 years now, I am wasting resources I do not have to waste. So I would argue job 1 at the trade show floor is have a lot of conversations. But job 2 is have a lot of qualifying conversations.
Right.
How do you identify early adopters? Tell me about your farm. Tell me about the equipment you're using on the farm. If they're talking about 30-year-old tractors and 40-year-old tractors, and they don't mention anything shiny and new, maybe not an early adopter, right? So dig in a little. Hey, what robots have you tried? What robots have you rolled out? What robots have you seen work for you in your operation? If they haven't tried stuff, if they haven't rolled stuff out, if it hasn't worked, they're probably not your guy either, right? Even when they try stuff, it doesn't work. That's a red flag for a startup, because you will get blamed for that. You will take the brand hit for that, right?
Always.
And very often, and I won't name any names, but I mean, growers will under-resource. Not their fault, expectations were set wrong in a lot of cases. They'll under-resource trials so they don't go well, so the rollout never happens.
Yep.
You want to identify folks who have tried early technologies, gone through multiple successful and failed tests, lived through the other side, and then bought and rolled out stuff. If they haven't done stuff that tried and failed and succeeded and failed, and then rolled stuff out, you want to keep on moving, right? Or at least put them down the priority queue from a Salesforce or a CRM perspective, right? So for me, you've got to find the early adopter. You've got to then find the successful, quote unquote, early adopter. And you got to really over-service that guy, because the only way you're going to get to that mid-size guy behind the large guy is by finding a mid-size guy to buy and make him a reference account.
Yeah.
He's not going to, your average 500 to 1,000 acre guy, they're not going to look at Taylor Farms or Driscoll's Berries or Braga Fresh and say, oh, it's a great case study. It's just like me. It's not just like them.
Yeah.
So you need to downscale it from Taylor and Braga and Driscoll's down to another 500 acre operator, so your sales team can say, you know what? We did test with those guys. They did well. Different set of math. Here's the test we did with a guy that looks like you. 500 acres, middle of Salinas Valley, growing leafy greens, maybe not vertically integrated, maybe just a grower.
Sure.
So let's help you understand what you need. So that's where I see a lot of folks struggle, is even when they get the whale account, that is the early adopter, moving downstream to scale out sales, still really hard.
Yeah, I think it also relates to just generally how well known they are in the industry. If they're considered to be thought leaders,
100%.
Then that also helps on top of like their size. But usually it comes together.
Right.
I mean, people that grow 20 acres because they've owned this piece of property forever, they don't always tend to be very vocal in the industry, you know.
Right.
Sometimes they are.
No, you're exactly right. There are a lot of quiet growers, right?
Yeah.
They just don't make a lot of noise, and that's okay. But they're going to want to hear from you that you've got someone that profiles and pattern matches to them.
Exactly.
Which is the key. So no, it's a tricky sales process. And this does go to an issue I talk a lot about with both growers and startups. Is look, if you're coming from Israel, you're coming from South America, you're coming from Europe, you're entering the California market. You know this, right? You get to the California market, what's the first two things you learn? Wow, is this a big market? And wow, is this complicated?
Sure.
So having a sales partner with you on some of this journey is, in my opinion, tremendously beneficial. And I think, and it's funny, I've mixed it up with some of the startup CEOs say, no, it's got to be direct, I have to control it. I go, okay, fair enough. But understand, when you say that, so I graduated high school in 83, King City, down in Monterey County. Cal Poly 88, right? 5-year plan. There's guys that went to high school and went to college with me that are now growers and sales guys who are selling to each other for decades.
Right.
You can walk into that and win a sale, but you better be good and you better be able to create a relationship capital very fast, because those guys have known each other. Their kids have been at school sports together. Their kids have been at, parties together. I mean, it's a whole different world full of relationships. Relationships
in agriculture is something that is precious. It's like, it's very, very important, being able to form new relationships and maybe capitalize on old ones. It's.
I mean, your dad lived it.
He did.
Right?
Yeah, still does.
Yeah. And now he's got incumbent advantage, right?
100%.
It's huge.
100%.
It's huge. So you think about it. You're walking in with a new robot. You've got no relationship capital in Salinas Valley. You built this robot for 5 years in Israel. You've asked for the meeting.
Yeah.
Where do you start with that guy?
Yeah.
It's super hard.
It is very hard. But I think a good way to form new relationships is with credibility.
Absolutely.
If you show credibility, if you show that you do what you said you would, people appreciate it here. When you shake someone's hand and your word is your bond, even if you don't know each other, but you prove it, that forms a relationship pretty fast. Still hard to beat 20, 30, 40 year long relationship, but it's a good start.
I totally agree. Yeah. Yep. No, you have to make it happen. And that's why I tell every startup, I said, as you're coming to California, think hard about where you set up shop.
Yeah.
Think about your primary crop type and set up shop within 30 miles of a lot of them.
Yeah.
So if you're in trees, go by the tree people.
Yeah.
If you're in row crops, go by the row crop people. If you're in lettuce, go to Salinas Valley, right?
Yeah.
Don't set up shop in San Jose. Don't set up shop in, San Francisco. Set up shop closer to the fields where you're going to want to be in, and then get in those fields all the time.
The first thing we've done before we had an actual office was get a Fresno address.
That's right. I remember that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we do have an office. We're not in Fresno. We're in Del Rey, but in that area. Problem is, the Central Valley is pretty big.
It's huge. I know. I agree.
It's like, we're 30.
The Merced to Bakersfield corridor is not an easy drive.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I once visited one of our growers up in Williams, and then in Bakersfield on the same day. That was a drive. So.
And you know, for as wide open as it is, there's a lot of times where you're sitting on that freeway, either the 5 or the 99, and you just got to grind traffic.
Oh, 100%. The 99 afternoon?
Yeah.
No, thank you. I wanted to ask you about weather and volatility, right? Because not everything, new technology can necessarily solve or control, right? But the short-term weather volatility seems to be increasing. And how do you think that raises the bar for different AgTech solutions that are supposed to kind of support mid-season decisions when you can't even really predict what the weather is going to look like this year or this season?
Yeah. So I think it does two things, and it's funny, neither of them are really AgTech related, right?
Yeah.
Number one, it changes the grower's risk profile, because when 1 out of 5 years is going to get a bad weather event instead of 1 out of 20, I've got 4 times the risk, right?
Of course.
And so the grower has to allow for that risk and leave some extra margin in there in case that happens. And the second thing that happens is I didn't reduce my margin to manage that risk. And guess what? I don't have enough money to buy AgTech, right? And so I would say the increased weather volatility is definitely real. And the other impact is it can impact your yields. Like I've got our neighbor down in South County, in Monterey County, he's an olive grower, and they had, I believe the nightmare scenario he had was early heat that caused the blooms to get faked out and realize I need to start, and then late frost. So his yield was like not 20% off, 20% of normal. Right, so he was like 80% light for that whole year across 7,000 trees. That's a problem.
It is.
Luckily, he has a mill, and the mill did well that year, but that doesn't save everybody, right?
No.
And so I think the weather is just like so many other risk factors, right? Regulatory, markets, international markets coming over here and putting pressure on prices. Yeah. The grower always looks for 2 things. All right, what's the scope of the risk? And how can I mitigate that risk most effectively? Sometimes it's tech, sometimes it's operational, sometimes it's something else. Yeah. But their framework is always the same. All right, how big is that new risk? And how can I get it down, not to 0, but how can I get it, if it's a 10 going to 11, how do I get it down to 2? Yeah. And if your solution can help with that, they are listening.
And with all those changes or with all this unpredictability, do you think growers are looking more for solutions, technological solutions that are able to help them react really quickly, or learn from what happened after the fact, right? Learn from what happened, gather that data, and change the way they do things for the next season or the following.
Right. So everyone would love real time. Sure. But it's the most expensive and the least accurate in a lot of cases because it is real time. Yeah. So what they'll definitely take, because they know that this is more realistic, is all right, to your point, let me get smarter from this season. So the next rotation or next season, I can do better, right? And so whatever method that is, whether that's sensors, whether it's satellites, whether it's drones, whether it's ground truth, how can I get data off this rotation, this acre, this block, that I can then put into an analytics tool and give me a better planting plan for next time, right? Yeah. And where I do think there's going to be a lot of progress in the next 5 years, and this is partly because of the AI evolution, right, is you're going to see disparate data sets, like not just the field data on your stuff, but what about the market conditions? How many acres are planted of X? How many acres are planted of Y? And the more you know about how many acres of iceberg is out there, acres of romaine is out there. Maybe you change your rotation strategy a little bit that year and move some of the acres to something else because that looks like there's going to be a market gap. So I think that match between real-time data in the real world about what's coming to market and real-time to last season time data about what's best planted on your acreage can lead to a whole opportunity of recommendation engines that don't need hardware.
Right.
It's a different solution. And when you look at some of the, I mean, they're vibe coding ERP apps, for goodness sake, right? So what could a grower operations team vibe code over a couple of weeks in a rotation that actually does some nice data analytics work? I'm very curious to see.
Yeah. And you've said that growers respond best to technologies that kind of reduce uncertainty and support real decision making. So I got to talk about pollination. I mean, it's February. We're just about to start. I can't not talk about it. So when you look at companies like Be Hero, that we take the approach of combined biology, operations, and data into something that growers can actually act on. So how do you think that approach answers the growers' questions, or is it answering the grower question at all? The attempt to kind of try and use the biology as well as part of what you're doing, and not just, okay, it's there, I can't really do anything about it.
Right. So this is where automation is so different than this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Automation, I run the laser weeder through the field, I can measure what it got, I can measure what it didn't got, I can measure all of it, right?
Yeah.
And causation's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
With pollination, with biologicals, with genetics, with regenerative ag, it's really, so correlation's a little easier. I can say, okay, I did this happened. Causation gets really hard, right? So I think where you guys are doing a nice job is in putting that correlation status into causation status, back to the earlier discussion with grower math, right?
Yeah.
So what does the grower need out of pollination, right? Is it more yield? Is it more certainty? Is it more predictability? Is it something else? Well, again, where on the financial statement are you guys able to have an impact, and what were you able to measure that impact at? And then you can have the discussion, right? Okay, that guy's special because he's got X, Y, and Z. Not everyone does. I mean, example, if you're already doing regenerative ag, maybe the pollinator is 2x more effective, right?
Yeah.
If you're already doing good soil health, maybe it's 2 times more effective. So you need to be able to say, that guy's soil health was this. So Mr. and Mrs. Next prospect, next customer, you know what? If your soil health isn't that, we're not sure what your results are going to be, but we'd like to test it with you to find out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think trying to understand exactly how, like, the behavior of your crop based on everything else that happens in the farm, it's really hard.
Yep.
But it's also super important
Totally.
in order to be successful. So yeah, I guess I don't have like an epiphany here, but I'm just saying the combination of all the different things that happen in the orchard, because this is how biologically everything was engineered over I guess millions of years.
Exactly.
And we need to somehow tap into that, right. Understand how it works to the best of our ability, and try to make it a little bit better.
Yep.
I want to ask you, before we kind of, we're getting close to the end of our conversation, and I want to ask you a hard question. You've watched multiple AgTech cycles come up and go. What, from your perspective, the hardest truth about ag innovation that the industry still avoids admitting?
That some functions, and I'll use harvest as an example, may never, and definitely are not at the moment, great fits for venture capital. As much as we want to tell every founder, go out and raise a bunch, go conquer the world, go take it on, go build that unicorn, go, cash out your stock and go get that house in, whatever, Menlo Park. That's not always realistic. for AgTech. When you look at harvest, like look at the weeding, right? So for weeding, one machine can do 80 crops, right? I mean, we're up to massive crop loads.
Yep.
For harvest, we haven't yet seen a machine conquer one crop.
Sure.
Let alone two. So the TAM are automatically smaller. The dev cycle's inherently longer because finding a weed and destroy it, a little easier, not easy, but easier than find that apple, that head of lettuce, that pick your favorite, identify the ones that are ready to pick them very carefully.
Because you don't want to destroy them.
And put them in a bin very carefully.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is.
And so we've come to the conclusion at Western Growers that harvest is going to be the last mile for automation, which is frustrating for my specialty crop growers because 2/3 of the hours are harvest.
Yeah.
And so we've looked at it. All the good results are happening in non-harvest. The weeding, the planting, the thinning, the harvest assist.
Yep.
$250 million category last year. On its way to $1 billion. Venture capitalists understand it. They're writing checks. Startups are doing the work, carving the miles, all good. Harvest, we've got virtually no success in fresh produce harvest. And so we're taking on some new approaches this year.
Yep.
And we're going to use non-venture capital to make it happen. We're going to use grower capital and partner capital. And the whole goal of that is the automation solutions that are in market now. We believe that it's 50 to 100 million in venture capital to get them to commercialize.
Yeah.
We want to cut that number by a half to 2/3 if we can.
Well, that will be great.
Because we're not confident that we can get 50 to 100 million dollars for every specialty crop, even the popular ones. And we are confident that we can work with non-startup scale R&D teams to get to an outcome, right? Think about the original manufacturers. Think about the Voss, the companies, GK, all these manufacturing companies that are around here. All the names are escaping me at the moment. But basically, Milano Technical Group, some of these guys are used to working on pay-for-hire. Andros is the guy in Paso Robles. So you've got all these guys where they're used to pay me and I'll build. Pay me and I'll build.
Yep.
They don't need a hockey stick.
Right.
They don't need a unicorn outcome. We want to work with those players to try and get them to non-venture capital development outcomes so we can sell to our growers. It's working with the Strawberry Center in Cal Poly right now, right? The Strawberry Commission funded an entire set of initiatives around automation because they realized everything but harvest for strawberry on the manual labor front is not venture capital scale.
Really?
So they looked and they realized, okay, yes, strawberry is 60% of the labor for harvest, but 40% is not. And those are like 10 to 11 disparate tasks that I need automated to help my labor problem.
Yeah.
And they looked at Cal Poly and they said, all right, here's our list. Here's the top 5. And guess what? Over 10 years at the Strawberry Center, with the industry funding professional engineers to stand up student teams on campus at Cal Poly, they've gotten 3 machines and 3 different tasks. I believe it's detopping, plastic hole punching, and runner cutting, I think it is. And they got to an R&D stage. They got grower feedback that the machines were done, and they're being sold on the Central Coast through normal dealer channels. Not a dollar of venture capital anywhere in the supply chain and R&D chain.
That is so interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's the model we're looking at for harvest, acknowledging that hole punching and detopping are a little more straightforward and can be done by student engineering teams. Again, that harvest process I laid out, that might be the hardest process to solve in agriculture.
Right, because all the AgTech companies, what they're looking for is like a SaaS business model, right? Like we want to stay there forever.
Yep.
And get paid monthly, annually, whatever you call it. But yeah, that's very
revenue,
interesting. Yeah,
ARR, MRR.
Exactly.
And as I always tell startups, I said, look, if your investor's giving you advice, and it's generally to move faster, and the grower's giving you advice, and it's generally slow down.
Let's figure this out first.
No sudden movements.
Yeah.
You have to listen to the grower and find a way to placate that investor, because if you do it the other way around, that grower stops talking to you. Your investor has to talk to you.
Sure. That is very true. That's great. Thank you. We're going to get into our last segment.
Okay.
And we call it 60 seconds between the rows. I'm going to ask you rapid fire questions, and I'm expecting rapid fire answers.
I'll do my best.
Don't overthink anything because it's funner that way.
Duly noted.
All right, so 60 seconds between the row. Here we go.
Yes, sir.
We'll start with the first question. Labor or capital?
Which would I take?
Yes. Which one do you think is more important on a farm?
Labor.
Labor. Field data or gut instinct?
Field data.
Best way to earn growers' trust?
Results.
Oh, that's a good one. One AgTech buzzword you will retire.
CEA.
What's that?
Controlled environment agriculture. The vertical farming. I'm done with it. They wasted a lot of capital.
Yeah. One area of innovation that's underrated.
Analytics tools.
Okay. Do you think, I'm going out of script, do you think growers understand how to use analytical tools?
Not yet. Those two are probably related.
Yeah.
They're probably tied together.
What's a harder job, being a grower or an AgTech founder?
AgTech founder because of the capital constraints.
Okay. The redwoods or the beach?
Beach.
Okay. AI today, is it already life-changing or still mostly a gimmick?
For me, life-changing. I've been using it 2.5 years and it has saved me so many hours.
Okay.
So many hours.
And you've made it successfully thus far. We have one more question.
Okay.
Morning fog or afternoon sun?
Afternoon sun.
Okay.
Every day.
When you said the beach, I already suspected this is going to be the answer.
Well,
for that.
and for me, it's a golf course more than a beach.
Okay, there you go.
I'll take afternoon sun every time.
In Monterey, there are a few good spots.
100%.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm sure. By the way, I've played golf like an actual game one time in my life.
Oh, what was the occasion?
Yes. I was at a growers event.
I was gonna, yep.
Apple growers in Yakima Valley.
Well, of course, Inez Hanrahan.
And I learned that it's not about the golfing.
Not at all.
And it was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
And it didn't matter that I'm not very good.
It's the John Feinstein book title is right. It's a good walk spoiled by a few shots. No, it's awesome. That's why we have scramble tournaments. Your shots don't have to count.
It was a scramble tournament, and boy, did we scramble! It was a lot of fun.
It sounds like it. Good for you.
Yeah,
a lot of guys won't take that chance. It doesn't matter if you haven't golfed. It's not about the golf. You're so right.
Yeah.
You're so right.
And that
it's 4 hours.
Like, I was invited to join a team of growers.
Okay.
I was flattered and I wanted to do it, but I also didn't want them to lose because of me. And I was like, look, I'm really flattered about the invitation, but I've never played. Like, I'm gonna be really bad. Like, I've been to Top Golf,
Right,
I can hit the ball.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah. And they're like, no, you don't understand. It doesn't matter. Just come. It'll be fun. And I came, and it was fun.
That's awesome.
And I had to wait a couple hours before I could get in my rental car and drive back to the airport, but
some of us get overserved on a golf course. It does happen, Itai. That's so good.
I did not expect that. I mean, we're out in the sun. It was such a beautiful day. I was like, I need to do this more.
Oh no, a beer on a golf course is like a beer on a plane. It's like a 2.5x.
Yeah.
It hits you a little harder. But hey, don't forget this. If you're not a golfer, they should be factoring in your handicap, which will be nice and high. So you actually help the good players because your handicap factors in with theirs.
The group did get to second place.
Oh, see?
Yeah, we were far behind the first place, but we were second. So
sounds like they might have cheated a little better than you guys. Scramble tournaments are notorious.
No, they were very about it, they were like really they hated when they started behind us, and they got mad when we took our time.
Did they?
Yeah. So we at some point we let them pass, and they were really
playing through in a scramble tournament. Wow.
Yeah.
No, it's something most folks don't know. Yes, golfers are outdoors a lot. Yes, they work hard, but they play hard too. And there's a lot of good golfers.
Oh, I'm sure.
So my one story on there, David Gill. a King City farmer.
Yeah.
He won the Pebble Beach Pro-Am over Tiger Woods and his partner playing with a professional.
Wow.
What a story that is.
Yeah. Well, Walt, this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it personally. I've learned a lot, and I hope everybody else that's listening also learned a lot. So thanks for getting into like what growers want with me. Again, this was a fascinating conversation. So I guess that's it for this episode. Thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
I'm Itai Kanot, and we'll see you next time.